The morning was bright, too bright for a hospital visit. Lana said it was just a wellness evaluation, a simple checkup after the dizzy spell I'd had last week. She was smiling as she helped me into the car. Her voice calm, rehearsed. I didn't question her. My daughter had always been the practical one, organized, efficient, the kind of woman who managed calendars down to the minute. We drove for nearly an hour, the radio humming softly between us. She talked about work, about Kyle's new project, about nothing that mattered. When I asked why we were heading out of town, she said, "Just a temporary facility, Mom. Nicer than the one nearby. You'll like it." I remember laughing lightly. I didn't pack for a vacation. At the reception desk, the woman behind the counter smiled too wide. Her hands moved quickly, sliding a clipboard toward me. The forms were long, filled with small boxes and fine print. Lana stood close, her hand resting on my shoulder. "It's just consent for observation," she said. I trusted her. I signed. She took a phone call right after and stepped outside. I waited, watching the second hand crawl around the clock. 10 minutes passed, then 20. When I asked the nurse where she went, the woman hesitated. "Your daughter said she'd be back later," she murmured. Later never came. Dinner arrived on a tray I didn't order. My purse was gone, my phone too. When I asked to call Lana, they said I could do that after orientation. I told them there must be a mistake. They looked at me the way people look at stray dogs, gentle, cautious, already convinced of something. That night, the administrator came in with a folder and a soft, practiced smile. She told me I'd been admitted for long-term care, effective immediately. I laughed at first, a short sound that didn't feel like mine. She showed me the paperwork. My signature was there, shaky but familiar. I stared at it until the lines blurred. My daughter had signed my future away. They told me I had confusion spells. I didn't. I had a daughter who needed me gone, and I was just starting to understand how far she'd already gone to make that true. I couldn't sleep that night. The lights in the hallway outside my door never dimmed, and the sound of distant television sets and nurses' shoes echoed like reminders that I was no longer home. I sat in the stiff-backed chair by the window, hands folded in my lap, staring into the dark until the glass turned gray with morning. I kept thinking about Lana's face, how composed she looked, how easy it had been for her to leave me there. Not even a pause, not even a backward glance. It wasn't always like this. After Robert died, Lana was just 8. She didn't understand what heart failure meant, but she knew something had been taken from us. I remember holding her in the middle of the night when she woke up crying for her father, telling her we'd be okay, even when I didn't believe it myself. I worked full-time at the school, turned down every promotion that required longer hours or evening meetings just so I could be there when she got off the bus. I brought home stacks of papers to grade after she fell asleep. Every school play, every dentist visit, every parent-teacher conference, I was there. When she got into business school, I cried in the car after dropping her off. She never knew that I sold my annuity to cover the tuition gap. I didn't want her starting adult life buried in debt. She said thank you once quickly, like it embarrassed her to accept it. I never asked her for anything. Only that I could stay in the house I built, the one Robert and I bought, when we still thought life would stretch forever. It was still in both our names. I told Lana I'd cover the bills if she handled the online accounts. She said she'd take care of everything. Temporarily, she said. I trusted her. Now they said my access was revoked. My lights turned off. My name removed. I skipped dinner so she could have braces. Picked up night shifts when she wanted piano lessons. Went without so she could thrive. And now she called me a burden. I stood slowly and crossed the room to the small dresser. There was nothing inside except a folded towel and a plastic comb. I opened the bottom drawer and found a notepad. I took it out, sat back down, and picked up the pen. The next morning, I asked the nurse for a notebook. She gave me a puzzled look, then returned with a small spiral one from the activity room. The cover was bent, and a child had drawn a smiling sun on the front in faded crayon. I thanked her anyway. I needed paper, not perfection. When she left, I sat on the narrow bed and began to write. My hand shook, at first, not from age, but from anger held too long without release. I listed what I could remember: bank's insurance accounts, property deeds, passwords I'd used for years. It wasn't neat. It wasn't organized. It was survival. I wrote down the name of the credit union Robert and I had used when we bought the house, the one where I'd deposited my pension every month. Then came the mortgage company, even though the loan had been paid off decades ago. I added my attorney's name, Dawn Keating, the woman who'd drawn up our will after Robert's death. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but I knew she never deleted a client file. By the time I looked up, the page was nearly full. My mind, once clouded by disbelief, started to clear. I remembered the trust, how Robert had insisted on adding a clause that prevented any transfer of ownership without my written consent. I'd forgotten it until now, but the words returned like a key sliding into a lock. I reached for the phone at the nurse's station after lunch. They hesitated, asked if I wanted to call family. No, I said. Someone more reliable. I dialed the number from memory, half afraid it would be disconnected. It rang twice before the automated message played. This is Dawn Keating, attorney at law. Please leave your name and number and I'll return your call as soon as possible. I waited for the tone, my throat dry. This is Irene Maddox, I said carefully. My daughter has committed fraud using my name. I need help. I hung up before my voice could break. That night, I tucked the notebook under my pillow like a secret and closed my eyes. Somewhere inside me, something had shifted, small, certain, unshakable. By morning, I knew exactly what I had to do next. Dawn arrived 2 days later. She didn't call ahead. She just walked in like she still had every right to, because she did. Her blazer was too sharp for the soft lighting of the facility, and her heels echoed on the tile like a warning bell. When she saw me, she smiled. But it wasn't pity. It was purpose. "You look like hell, Irene," she said. I nodded. "That's about right." We sat at the small table by the window. She pulled out a folder and a yellow legal pad. "Start from the beginning." I told her everything. The dizzy spell, the weekend lie, the forged paperwork, the closed accounts. She listened with the same stillness I remembered from when Robert passed, and we sat in her office trying to figure out how to hold everything together. When I finished, she reached into her bag and pulled out a copy of the power of attorney Lana had submitted. She laid it flat between us. "Is that your signature?" I stared at it. The loops were familiar, but the date was wrong. The slant leaned too far right. "My hands don't write like that anymore." "No," I said. "That's not mine." She nodded. "That's what I thought." Then she flipped to the deed of the house. "This," she tapped, "is still yours. You and Robert placed it in a transfer on death trust 20 years ago. Your name is the only one listed as trustee and beneficiary. Lana doesn't own a single nail in that house." My breath caught. She said the house was hers now. She lied. She opened another folder. "The joint account you shared. You never removed her as an authorized user, but you still hold primary ownership. We'll revoke her access first thing tomorrow." It felt like someone had returned my spine bone by bone. I reached for the notebook I'd hidden under my pillow and handed it to her. She scanned the pages quickly. "This is good," she said. "This gives us everything we need." I looked out the window at the gray sky. "Lana thought she was getting a house and peace of mind," I said. She forgot I still read the fine print. Dawn closed the folder. Then it's time we remind her what the fine print really says. By the next morning, Dawn was already in motion. She moved through the paperwork like a surgeon, deliberate and exact. I sat beside her at the small desk in her office, my hands still stiff from weeks of uselessness, signing line after line. Fraud report. Power of attorney revocation. Petition to vacate. Each signature felt like reclaiming a part of myself she had tried to bury. You'll get copies of everything Dawn said. Once these are filed, they can't touch your accounts or your property. Good, I said. Then file fast. She smiled faintly. Already done. That afternoon, she made the calls to the county clerk, to the bank, to the process server. I listened quietly, the words blurring into a rhythm of control and consequence. I'd spent my life avoiding confrontation, but there was something deeply satisfying about this justice moving forward without my voice trembling to make it happen. At 6:30 the next morning, a knock echoed through Lana's front door. Dawn told me later how it went. The process server handed the thick envelope to Kyle first. He looked confused, then angry. Lana appeared in the doorway, wearing one of the silk robes I'd given her years ago, the one she used to say made her feel elegant. The irony wasn't lost on me. The notice was brief and absolute. Fraud investigation. Revocation of power of attorney. Petition to vacate the property within 30 days. My name at the bottom. Irene Maddox, trustee and owner. An hour later, the front desk called up to the room. The receptionist's voice was hesitant. There's a woman on the line asking for you. Says her name is Lana. I didn't ask to be transferred. Tell her I said this facility doesn't take jokes. I heard the silence on the other end before the line disconnected. There was nothing else to say. By noon, Dawn had arranged my discharge. The nurse walked me to the front desk, where a small stack of documents waited for me in a manila folder. I tucked them under my arm and buttoned the same cardigan I'd worn the day Lana dropped me off. It still smelled faintly of home. Outside, the sun was sharp and clean, the air colder than I remembered. Dawn pulled up to the curb, the passenger door already open. I got in without looking back. It was time to go home. The condo wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, small kitchen with yellow tiles someone else chose decades ago. But it was clean, bright, and quiet. I paid for it in full. No mortgage, no paperwork for Lana to touch. Just my name on the deed in ink no one else had forged. It sat on Crofton Street, a narrow road lined with tall oaks and modest houses. 3 blocks east was the glass office building where Lana worked, though I doubted she'd be going in much after the court papers landed in her lap. I didn't buy the place for spite. I bought it for clarity. The patio faced west, perfect for late afternoon light. On my second day, I went to the nursery and picked out a flat of red tulip bulbs. I planted them in the soft earth under the windows, kneeling slowly, careful with each root. They'd bloom in spring. I could have chosen anything, roses, daffodils, even nothing at all. But the tulips felt right. Bold, unapologetic, brief, but impossible to ignore. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a letter. Short, formal, clear. Lana, this is to inform you that you are required to vacate my property within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in formal eviction proceedings. This matter is not up for discussion. Irene Maddox. I printed 2 copies. One went to Dawn, one I mailed certified. I didn't wait for a reply. I unpacked my dishes the next morning and placed the ceramic bowl Robert bought me on our 5th anniversary at the center of the table. A small thing chipped at the rim, but mine. The silence in this new place was different. Not empty, but earned. I walked barefoot from room to room, not checking for approval, not asking permission. Later, I stood on the patio with a cup of tea and looked out over the street. The mailbox had my name on it again. Full name. No abbreviations, no attachments. I didn't need her apology. I needed her out. And now that process had already begun. The first sign came quietly. Dawn forwarded me a notice from the clerk's office Kyle had filed for unemployment. The severance was minimal, and the job market in his field was already crowded. without my house or the joint account to lean on, their options narrowed fast. They'd counted on stability that didn't belong to them. A week later, I heard from an old acquaintance who still worked at Lana's firm. She called under the pretense of checking in on me, but her voice was tight, curious. "Are you all right, Irene?" I mean, after everything I asked what she meant, though I already knew. Lana had always been careful about appearances. Polished emails, polite conversations, smiling photos with just the right filters. But people notice when something cracks. She'd been skipping meetings, missing deadlines. And now the whispers had started about legal filings, about her mother, about fraud. I didn't need to say anything. I just let the silence fill the line until my acquaintance cleared her throat and changed the subject. A few days later, Dawn called with a dry chuckle in her voice. "She tried to open a new credit line using your maiden name," she said. Claimed inheritance was pending. Application flagged and denied. I said nothing. Months ago, I'd filed a name protection order, tying my maiden and married names to estate-related legal identifiers. It wasn't foolproof, but it was enough to trigger alerts on new financial activity. Lana had no access, not to my accounts, not to my property, and now not even to my name. She wasn't just cut off from my assets. She was cut off from my legacy. That night, I walked past the tulips, now pushing green through the soil. I brushed my fingers lightly over their tips. Even without full bloom, they stood tall. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not quite. Just distance. Kyle had stopped answering calls from the bank. Lana was seen leaving her office with a box under one arm. Whether she quit or was asked to leave, I didn't know. I didn't need to. She had built her comfort on the illusion of control, and now every pillar was crumbling. And just as the walls began to close in, I heard a soft knock on my door. It was late afternoon when I heard the knock. Not firm or impatient, just tentative, polite. I opened the door to see Tyler standing there, his backpack slung low over one shoulder, eyes darting between the floor and my face. "Hi, Grandma," he said, voice low. I hadn't seen him in weeks, not since before everything began unraveling. He looked older somehow, not in size, but in the way he carried himself. He'd started to learn things no child should have to learn so young. "Come in," I said. I stepped aside, and he walked in like he wasn't sure if he should. He didn't say much at first, just sat at the kitchen table while I poured him a glass of water. He didn't ask for soda or snacks like he used to. When I placed the glass in front of him, he whispered, "They told me you were sick." I sat across from him, said you were confused, said you weren't safe alone. I nodded slowly, but didn't interrupt. He looked up, searching my face. "But you don't look sick. You just look done." I smiled, not at the words, but at the honesty in them. "Do you want to help me with the garden?" I asked. He blinked, then nodded. We spent the next hour in the backyard. I handed him gloves that were a little too big and showed him how to dig the shallow trenches for the tulip bulbs. He worked quietly, carefully, as if the soil might reveal something if he treated it gently enough. He didn't ask why I hadn't come back. He didn't ask what his parents had done. He didn't need to. When we finished, he stood and brushed the dirt from his hands. "Can I come back tomorrow?" he asked. "Of course," I said. He turned to leave, then paused at the gate. "I don't know what's going on," he said. "But I'm glad you're still here. So am I." He walked down the sidewalk and I watched him until he turned the corner. That night, I brought out the old notebook from under the dresser drawer and flipped through the pages, each one a memory of survival. Then I added a new one, his name, a small note next to it, still reaching. I closed the book gently. The next day, the certified letter was due to arrive. The last of the legal paperwork came on a Wednesday. Dawn slid the folder across the table, neat and complete. My new will notarized and final. Every page was where it needed to be, every clause written in my voice, not borrowed or stolen. All assets, savings, property, insurance, Even the small trust Robert left were assigned to a new foundation I'd helped Dawn create, the Senior Legal Defense Fund. It would provide counsel for older adults who'd been coerced or confined against their will. I added one personal clause, at the end anonymous donations only. My name had carried enough weight for one lifetime. Lana's wasn't mentioned anywhere. Not once. I signed in silence, the pen gliding steady across the paper. Dawn gathered the documents and looked at me for a long moment before saying, "You've done something good, Irene. I just cleaned up the mess I should have stopped." "Sooner," I replied. That evening, I made the first transfer, $75,000 to the fund's account. Watching the confirmation window blink across the screen felt like a final breath of release. The money wasn't much compared to what was taken, but it was enough to start protecting someone else. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Lana's name appeared. No words in the preview, just her number staring back at me like an old photograph I no longer recognized. I let it ring, then fade into silence. A minute later, a text came through. "Can we talk?" I deleted it without opening it. The next day, Tyler came by after school as he often did now. He dropped his backpack on the floor and helped me carry groceries to the kitchen. He was taller than I remembered. Voice deeper, but his smile still carried the softness of the boy I'd once read bedtime stories to. "Feels different here," he said. "Like, calm." "It's a good kind of quiet," I told him. He nodded, then added almost shyly, "I like it. Feels like our place." I looked at him, the boy who hadn't learned yet that love didn't have to hurt, and felt something in me settle for good. If they thought I was a burden, why are they still carrying the weight of my name? What happens when the person you erased builds a life louder than your silence?